everyone, Namaste, and welcome to the Temple of Lights in Ananda Sisi, where tonight we will celebrate the moksha, what we call the moksha of Swamikananda, which is his liberation, his freedom. Swamikananda left the body 8 years ago, 21st of April of 2013, in his house here in Ananda Sisi. And after a life of incredible creativity, all put to service of his great Guru Paramahansa Yogananda. And he wanted to share with many people the great blessings, the great bliss of being disciples of such a great master like Yogananda. And I won't say much more because we have beautiful speakers tonight. First, Swami Kirtani will speak in English, and she'll be translated into Italian. And then 𝗕𝗢𝗎 will speak, and he will speak in Italian with the translation in English. And they both knew Swamikananda and spent a lot of time with him, also toward the end of his life. So you can expect very deeply inspiring stories from them. And we're also here with a small fraction of the choir, conducted by 𝗕𝗢𝗙𝗦𝗔𝗠𝗘. And we will start this evening with 5 songs chosen on this basis. Each song will express a different aspect of the life, of the energy, and above all of the consciousness that was Swami Kriyananda. And we will end the evening with a flower ceremony prepared in a beautiful way by our Sabine. And we have our technicians tonight, Ruby and Veronica. And we wish you an evening full of blessings, full of inspiration. And so even though he left the body, Swami left the body many years ago, 8 years ago, we never stopped feeling his presence in our lives in all of these years. So thank you and have a wonderful, inspiring evening.
Some men call it progress. Now with those who doubt, to join the causes others join, and shout when others shout. Come, you're a man, no passive stone. Stand up and call your soul your own. Go on alone, go on alone. Banish weakness, go on alone. Go on alone, go on alone. Don't look back, just go on alone. Some men lack the daring ever to be free. They shun the heights and crowded depths and court security. Come, you're a man, no passive stone. Stand up and call your soul your own. Go on alone, go on alone. Banish weakness, go on alone. Go on alone, go on alone. Don't look back, just go on alone. Cowards see but pride in singularity. Oh, never mind if men are wrong, so long as they agree. Come, you're a man, no passive stone. Stand up and call your soul your own. Go on alone, go on alone. Banish weakness, go on alone. Go on alone, go on alone. Don't look back, just go on alone. Claim the power within you, error to defy. The world may change or disappear, tesoro tu sei tutto per me, luce di luci tu sei.
So, this is a new experience for me. I'm 𝗦𝗪𝗔𝗠𝗔𝗍𝗔, and for years I've been part of the choir and singing. But because of COVID, the choir has had to be very small. We can't sing right next to each other. And so I had the pure pleasure tonight of listening to Swami Kriyananda's music from the audience point of view. Swamiji has always said, if you want to really know me, listen to my music. And I've always listened from inside the choir, and it is incredibly inspiring, as you could see from the people that were singing tonight, how inspired they were sharing this music. And now I have had the experience for the first time in many years of really hearing the live vibration, power, and message of Swami's music. And I must say I'm thrilled. Thank you, Peter, and thank all of you who sang for us this evening. This morning, we had an opportunity to meditate. And again, we heard some of Swami's songs. And although you can gain a lot from his music just from the music itself, it's very inspiring. And Swami shares so much of his vibration and consciousness also through the words that he gives. And so he has written songs about friendship, brothers. He's written songs about the importance of giving yourself to God. And if you have a chance to, at a moment when the choir can sing again in person, do take the opportunity. I know that those of you who have heard the choir sing in person will know what I'm saying. Swamiji's life, as has been said, I wanted to say, it was so inspiring this whole day today to see on social media all of the sharings of people about how Swamiji has brought inspiration to their lives on Facebook, on WhatsApp. Those are the two that I know best. Really, thousands of people shared today the inspiration that they have had from Swami Kriyananda's life. And so I want to share that with you. And because I also want to share the story of Swami's passing, I won't be able to take a lot of time in the beginning for other thoughts, but still I would like to take this opportunity. Swamiji, not only through his music, but through his life, always carried through with certain life lessons. And 3 of those were the lessons of encouragement, of challenging people, of loving, and of making people laugh. And in every one of those areas of life, Swamiji was, his as Darshan said, his purpose was to find God and to help others find God. And in doing that, he helped each person learn the lessons that they needed in order to find God and perhaps also to become someone who helps others find God. And so I wanted to share with you these words. My talking about Swamiji tonight is going to be mostly about that period of time where he was towards the end of his life and what he manifested of that goal of finding God and helping others find God. Swamiji said, and this was, let's see. So this was when he was 86, so it was just a year or so before, maybe even just 6 months before he left his body. And he says, I didn't expect the path to God to be easy, which is fortunate because it hasn't been. And there Swami's humor comes in. He does, even in a situation which we are talking about tonight, which is his passing, his death, he still would be able to share something that would help people to see the humorous side of life. So he says, here I am at age 86, still energetically serving God. Mentally, I have had my hardships, but I'm grateful for all of them. As Master said, Master for him is Yogananda, of course, living for God is martyrdom. I am indifferent now to whatever punishes my ego. Indeed, I'm grateful for it, for ego is the one thing we must overcome if we would know God. And so Swamiji, just less than a year before he left his body was talking about his gratitude for the hard knocks, the difficult times of his life that helped him to let go of the ego's reaction to life. And then he says something very, very dear. He says, I am grateful also, however, for all the many true friends God has given me in you all. And even those of you who were not here in this lifetime with him, he is talking to you as well. Because friendship isn't limited by being with someone who is in the body. We have many friends here with our avatar gurus. And many of our friends and family have passed, and yet we still treasure what we gained and what we were able to give in that friendship. So he says, I'm very grateful. You are a wealth beyond compare. Thank you, and thank you for helping me to reach this day of supreme gladness in my life. And I know he would have said this on the very day of his passing. So now we're looking at April of 2013. And at this point, Swamiji is actually here in Italy. He left the body on April 21st, 2013. And he's very not looking at death at all, but looking at what the film Finding Happiness has brought to Ananda and to all of the people who have seen the film. And I will be talking more about this film in a moment. He says, Ananda has now become more than a place. It is a principle. Our communities have shown that it is possible to live in brotherhood, harmony, and serviceful happiness. And this is something that Swamiji did his whole life. He was a model for us of all of these qualities, and he is a large part of why Ananda is what it is as a principle. But don't think that that possibility ends with his passing, because Ananda continues to grow in all of the aspects that Swamiji was talking about in terms of living in brotherhood and harmony and servicefulness and happiness. And Ananda is a principle and an environment in which Swamiji gave us the model for sharing all of these qualities that we can both live and become. And Kriyananda writes, all that I have done has been for God and for my guru. God is the only reality. And this is something not long, a few days before his death, that he has realized and is sharing with us that God is the only reality. Now, I'd like to share the story, which comes... I was debating where to start this story. In 2012, Ananda and I were vacationing in Goa at the same time that Swamiji was having a much-needed rest with just Shurjo and Narayani, who were his caretakers at the time, but also very dear friends, and Miriam, his nurse, who was in a nearby hotel in Goa. And Ananda and I were nearby, and as it turned out, the movie Finding Happiness, which Swamiji was a major part of and helped to make happen, the director's cut of that movie, which means it wasn't the final, was finished and ready for Swamiji to view, but it was in America, and Swami was in India. And so Asha, the great devotee, and a devotee that would sacrifice herself in this way, said she would bring, sorry about the voice, she said she would bring the director's cut of Finding Happiness to Goa, and that way Swamiji could see it before it actually was made into the final version. And so she arrived, she stayed where Ananda and I were staying, and we together went over to Swami's hotel in order to set up his big television in his room so that he could see Finding Happiness. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, you should very definitely watch it. In a moment, you will understand why. So it took a little while to set it up, and when it was ready, we agreed that if there was any comment that Swamiji wanted to make, we would stop the film, and he could make comments or corrections. From the moment that the movie started, there was not a single pause. Swamiji and all of us were absolutely riveted watching this retelling of Swami's story of finding the Guru, but of creating the manifestation of his Guru's dream and vision of World Brotherhood colonies. And at the end, all of us, including Swamiji, we just had tears running down our face, not of sadness, but of the great joy of seeing this dreamed of manifestation of Paramahansa Yogananda's vision of World Brotherhood colonies. I think I will tell you how this story finishes, because at the end of Swami's life, right in the last week of his life, Shivani brought to Swami's house here in Ananda Assisi, Moksha Kutir is now called, the final version of Finding Happiness. And again, we were invited to watch, and we were all the putting together of Swami's music and seeing what was essentially his life story put into concrete and inspiring vision had us all once again in tears. And Swamiji said when he saw the finished version, see if I can find the quote. Because for those of us who had been with Swamiji nearly from the beginning of this manifestation of Ananda communities starting in America, we could really understand, and Swamiji said he could see now why Master said and how it would come to be that this movement of World Brotherhood colonies would spread like wildfire over the whole world. And in this moment, seeing what had been created in a film that thousands, even tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people could see, Swami understood that this was how that could happen. And he said, everything I had hoped to accomplish for Master, it's there. It's here in the Ananda communities and in every individual who is living the teachings of Kriya Yoga and of self-realization in their lives wherever they are. So back to India at that point, Swamiji went back to Pune, and outside of Pune there was a small Ananda community, and that's where he had a home. And so Ananda and I went there to say goodbye to Swamiji before we came back to Italy. And it was already unusual for Swamiji to be so inward and so silent. And this was a part of his life for the last few years. His body was not well. It always challenged him. But he also was just, you could see that he was more and more wanting to be inward and silent. And so we went to say goodbye, and Swamiji very sweetly offered to us, each of us, a shawl that he had either used in meditation or he had worn. And it's always something that you can feel when you come to Ananda and you go to his home in Moksha Kutir. You can feel the vibration of the space that Swamiji was in. You can feel the vibration of the clothing that he wore. And so it was something we treasured. And so we stood up to say goodbye. We could see that he was tiring. And Swamiji moved to stand up, and we said, no, Swamiji, please don't bother getting up. Please stay. But he insisted, and he got up. And usually when we leave Swami and we know it's for a longish time, we ask for a blessing, and he will give a blessing, touching us at the spiritual eye. And this is what we expected. But Swamiji came right up to each of us and embraced us in a big hug, which, for all of us in the COVID days, we know that we aren't doing that. But even then, Swamiji did not do that. And he gave us each a very warm hug, and we felt the blessing, and we said goodbye. And as we were walking away from the house, Ananda and I looked at each other and we said, that felt like goodbye. And we had some concern. We knew that he was planning to come to Italy, and we were hoping that he would indeed be able to come. And he did. He had to go through another period of difficulty with his body, but he recovered from that, and he came to Italy. And I know all of us here, although it was sad, we feel the incredible blessing that Swami Kriyananda came here, and that whether he chose or whether it was just his time to leave his body in Ananda, Assisi. Because, and we invite all of you, when you come, you'll need to make an agreement at reception, but you can come and meditate or take a few minutes to be able to feel yourself. If you met Swami Kriyananda, you know his vibration, his energy, his magnetism is so encompassing. That hug that we received, everybody gets it energetically from Swamiji. Everyone would feel that from Swamiji, that he was their best friend. And he was that to people because he wanted for them what God wanted for them, which was their freedom in the infinite. So, in that time that he was in Italy, he arrived, I think, in February, and it was mid-April when he left his body. And in those 2 months, it was different than previously. Usually, Swamiji would invite some people over for tea, and he would read the latest chapter of a book he was writing, or the revision, or he would share his latest song. This time, he was very interiorized, very inward, and very silent. Even those who lived with him and helped him in his home, they talked about how much he was in silence and inside in this time, obviously very attuned to his guru, to Yogananda. And so we come to Easter. And this was Easter Sunday. Swamiji had just written something that he asked to be read during the Sunday service. Now, for us, Easter Sunday, it's really a celebration, because we are celebrating not only the risen Christ, but the risen consciousness of Christ in every one of us. And Swamiji, that is normally what he would be talking about on Easter Sunday. On this day, he had read something that was a little disconcerting, hearing it for the first time, because he talked about, do I have some of the words here? I don't, but he talked about, look into Yogananda's eyes in the last smile, which is the photograph that we use of Master for most of our altars. And I have one here right in front of me too. Look into those eyes and think about the fact that he was minutes away from leaving his physical body forever. And there was no fear. There was no suffering. There was no regret or resistance to what was going to happen. And I think that Swamiji knew this as well. Those of us who know him know he talked many times in our discussions about how ready he was to go. And so that message that he gave was one that we should have known was indeed an indication that he was not only ready to go, but he was going. That week, there was one day, I think, when 4 of us went in with Swamiji to town, and he went to one of his favorite restaurants. He connected with the people that he'd made friends with there. We went into the fruit and vegetable store where he got his fruits and vegetables, and he had made friends there. And he made several stops where he had become friends, where the people who ran those shops knew him, not only as a customer, but as a friend. And again, if we had really been aware, we would have known that he was saying goodbye to them. On this Saturday, and I'm sure that Narya will also share some, I hope he does, because we all have different perspectives and felt different things. He did have us come for tea on the Saturday before the Sunday that he left his body. We didn't know this, of course. And so in that time that he was there and we were there, again, his humor came out. He would speak to one of us very directly, looking right in our eyes. He would ask a question of someone and make that connection. I remember speaking of humor again, he said, well, I'm not going to walk today, because often if you come here, you'll see the driveway that Swamiji would walk every day. And this day, he said, I'm not going to walk today. I don't want to force Anand to walk backwards. And we all exploded into laughter because we knew exactly what he was saying. When we walked, the road is not that wide, and so maybe two people on each side could walk with Swamiji, and the others were walking in front but backwards, talking with Swamiji as they walked backwards. And Swamiji just brought up that very sweet and delightfully joking way of letting us know his sense of humor was still very much there. At the end of our discussions, or sometime during the discussions, he made a very clear statement. He said something like, I'm not good at exact words, I know that or in spite of the predictions that I will live another 5 years, he said, I just don't see that happening. And in fact, that wasn't what was going to happen. He was ready to go right then. And he did his sort of, well, and when he would do that, we'd know, well, it's time to go. You know, we've had our tea, we've had our chance with Swamiji to catch up on and to share things, and it was time to go. So we all got up and left. And now we come to the last morning. If you want a full, beautifully written description of that morning, there are several, actually. Narayani wrote her book, My Heart Remembers Swami Kriyananda. Miriam, who is his nurse, has written a book, and I don't remember the title. And Asha has included something about this from what she heard from people here about that morning of Swami's passing in her book, Light Bearer. So you can get a fuller picture, because I'm going to tell you just what was my experience with it. So we were meditating here in this temple, which many of you know. It was a Sunday morning, and the temple was quite full. And we were all in a nice, still, deep meditation. And suddenly there was a clap, 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 and you could tell that somebody was running very fast toward the temple. Now, I don't think there's ever been another moment where we heard that sound, so I knew something was not right. And I was sitting over here, and I turned around to look through the window, and there was Jaidara, who was Swami's cook, and he was running toward the temple. And so I got up very quickly. I tapped Anand and said, let's go see what this is. And we heard from Jaidara just the words, something's wrong with Swamiji. And so we went immediately with him with the car. I think I paused long enough to tap Saraswati, because she's our resident nurse, and ask if she could come with us. So we arrived at what is now Moksha Kutir, Swami's house, and he was already laying out on his bed. And I'm not going to tell you all of the story that leads up to that, because I don't have time, but you can read it in the books. What we found was Swamiji taking his final breaths. And he would take a kind of shaky inhalation, and then there would just be nothing for a long time. And either Miriam or Narayani would say, breathe, Swami, breathe. And he would take another breath, and that only happened with maybe 3 breaths before Swami took his last breath. Now, we all felt the responsibility here to let our family across the world know that Swami was leaving his body. So after that first breath, I think someone said, "Kirtani, can you call Jyotish Devi?" So I took my phone and went out into the other room. And I called, I told Jyotish Devi, "Swami seems to be taking his last breath. We think he's leaving his body. Please let everybody know to simply send light and accompany him on this journey, which he is so ready for." And when I went back in, he was just taking his last breath. And yes, it was not easy for us to see him go, because he had been, I was very inspired by Rudra's Facebook post today, because he talked about all of the things that Swami Kriyananda was to all of us. And Swami was all of those things. And so it's easy to feel like there's a big hole left when someone of that stature, spiritually, humanly, with all of the Ananda world, is no longer with us. But it was amazing, the energy that was in that room. The other people who described it said they just felt this incredible, it was all energy that went like this. They said they felt this incredible joy. And what I felt was just absolute freedom from all of the limitations that body had been to him in the last couple of years and much of his life. And it just felt like Swamiji was free. And I thought about those words that, in fact, he said in his Easter message. He said, "I want only to merge in God," which is one of the things, one of his goals of life, was to be able to find God. And the other was reflected in the sentence that he said right after, which was something along the lines of, "I just wish I could take all of you with me." And so even in those words and in that moment, we knew that in some way, Swami's merging in God was also taking us all with him. It gave us the message that this is possible for every one of us. And if Master and all of these gurus could live as human beings and become avatars and find God and help so many others find God, and if Swami Kriyananda, whom we knew, could live dedicating his life to God and Guru and find God and help so many other people along that path, then this is what we are here to do as well. So your part and your part and your part is also to know that you can find God and that you can help others do the same. And that's how we honor Swami's life, by following in his footsteps, by being one who dedicates life to finding God and to helping others find God. And now, Narya.
I met Swami Kriyananda in 1988. I had finished reading autobiography only a short time before that. And I found out that
there was a disciple of Yogananda in Assisi. When I came here, he wasn't present because he was in America. But the same year, the summer of that year, he came back. And I came here for a very special reason. I wanted to see the eyes of a person, disciple of Yogananda, who had looked into the eyes of his master. And when I arrived, we were preparing tea. It was at the Retiro here, and there were a few people. In that moment, Swami arrived, and the first words that I heard him say, there were 3 or 4 people. He said, "Welcome." And the sign of welcome you give to a person that there is a relation beyond that. You don't say it to someone that you don't know. You say it to someone that somehow belongs to you. And when I saw those eyes that looked at me, I couldn't continue to look at him, because those eyes of his were too brilliant. It was like looking into the sun, and you have to close your eyes. But he didn't close his eyes. And so that sun had arrived, and at that moment, I understood that something in my life important had happened, and that it wouldn't be the same anymore. At that moment, I felt the power of a disciple, the strength of a person who has dedicated his life to finding God. At that moment, there are no words. What Swami managed to convey to all of us, also to guests, he would say something, but from the heart, much more came than those mere words. And so these words that were hidden in his heart, they would enter in your heart, and there they would start to blossom. It was like a beautiful garden that he would plant in your heart, and all you need to do is water it, and then that garden would blossom and blossom. I was always deeply touched by the joy that he manifested. He wasn't a sad person. He was very deep, but he was always good-humored. There was never a moment in which he would not smile. His eyes always smiled, even when his body was giving him trouble. He was always very happy. I remember talking about his joyful playfulness when we were in Spain. He was so happy that when we got there, he had studied a little Spanish on the airplane, English, Spanish. And when we got there, the first thing he said when we met people, I didn't hear that, but so he spoke a fluent sentence in Spanish. Said, even if you wake up earlier, the day will not start earlier for you. So relax when you wake up in the morning. And so everyone started laughing in a most wonderful way. He put everyone at ease by making a simple joke. And so from that moment on, it was just such a joy to be able to listen to him. He spoke in Italian and in Spanish, and everybody understood because there was a power behind his words. It wasn't important whether he would make grammar mistakes. I don't think that any person missed one single word, because with that power behind it, he managed to enter your heart and to find the way to your heart. That was for me always an example. He was for an example in everything I did. There was such righteousness, such loyalty, such incredible loyalty towards his master. Everyone could perceive that Yogananda was living in Swami. When a person read or would meet Swami Kriyananda, there was always something, a special power there, a special light. As Kirtani said, he would embrace you. And with this embrace, he would open all the doors. I think that every person was really felt that Swami considered him or her a friend, because Swami would give you this astral hug. Something that touched me deeply, my heart, the first time when I visited Ananda village. First, we were in San Francisco, where Swami had his room, because the day after they went to the center in Portland, the Portland Center. So we all went to the airport, San Francisco airport. And when he came out of the car, there were other 5 or 6 people. And so Swami came to us, and he took my hand, and from the entrance of the airport, he went all the way to the check-in desk, and he kept my hand. The others would help him check in. He still kept me by the hand, held my hand, all the way until the departure gate. He didn't say much. He was speaking with others. But through that handshake, that maybe lasted 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I don't know. It was as if he had united his greatness as a disciple, and had conveyed that power that he had, this love. Not even my father would hold my hand for 50 minutes. And at that moment, I saw in Swami a great friend, but not a friend that... It was a friend who would give himself fully to the other friend. It was such a special moment. I couldn't speak. Maybe it's the first time that I tell this story, but I must be sincere. Him holding my hand when I think of it, and I can feel that handshake still. You can't forget these special touches of light, because they stay within you, in your heart, and they will never leave. There are so many stories. I'll tell you another one, a nice one. Swami was... The whole universe was in Swami, because there was a connection there with our masters and with Yogananda. We came to Lugano, and he was not feeling well at all. His body was vibrating, and he went to bed early. He couldn't stay standing, because he also had a hard time keeping his balance. And so he said, we'll see you tomorrow at breakfast at 9:30, tomorrow morning. At 9:30, usually we would get up early to meditate. And then around 8 o'clock, I look out of the window. There was a hotel down. There was a little central place, square. And I see Swami walking alone there. And I say, oh my God, he needs help. So I put my shoes on, run down to reach Swami. He was not walking very fast. I said, Swami, I'm here. Do you need any help? He looks at me and says, not to walk, but to eat a nice, some sweet with a hot chocolate. Yes, I might need some help. And so we went there to eat a special scone with hot chocolate. And I hadn't said anything, because the night before he was not feeling well at all. And within myself I thought, isn't it that he is helping many people through his own body, through his own health, that he would take a little bit of their karma. I never asked him, but within me, I'm quite sure that he did that. He was helping others because he wanted to help others. His mission was to help others and to help them to discover who they really were, the God that is present in each one of us. And Swami would draw it out of us. The rest, all the self-definitions were useless. The only thing that we need is to have that flower come out, which is the same flower that Swami had, the same flower that Yogananda had. All our masters had that same flower. We are not different from them. We just need to understand that we have it, and then give the possibility to that flower to blossom. Years sped by, and when Swami was there was a particular light always in everything. I remember, just to make you understand how much light he had. Thank you. This great disciple. Once he didn't feel. We were still in Lugano. We were on a boat actually. He wasn't feeling that well, and we had booked a boat to be able to take a tour with him, and we wanted to have that same experience on Lake Lugano. We were about 10, 12 people, and that day Swami said, "No, I'm not coming. You go." "No, Swami, if you don't come, we won't go." No, please, I want you to go, because if you don't go, then I must come too, because I want you to go. And we said, okay. We wanted to obey, obviously. And so we took the boat. When we had made a beautiful round on the boat, but it looked as if there was no one there with us. Each one of us felt lonely, felt alone, even though we were with friends. Because Swami, that light was missing, that would bind us all together. But with him we would become one big single light. So we were on that boat, but we really wanted to go back home. We were looking forward to go back to the hotel to see him again. Because at that moment we realized how important this bridge is between our body and our soul. And that bridge was Swami. Swami would bring you to the bridge that could help you cross and then go to Yogananda. So when you meditate and you see his eyes, you would immediately get in touch with Yogananda. Well, that bridge is there, and it's available still for each one of us. We only need to cross that bridge. With our mind, we have to cross that bridge. As I said before, years went by, many beautiful stories to tell. much love. We then got to Friday, April 19th of April 2013. That evening we received a phone call from Narayani, who said, "Swami would like to drink tea with you." We were like 5 or 6 people. And so we went, and that evening he had walked a little bit. It was on Friday. He took a short walk. And then we went back in. And so when we came into his house, there was still this joyful spirit, but you could also perceive that he was much more interiorized. There was a sense of centeredness, and his energy wouldn't go out so much because the energy was all inside. And when around 6:30, that's when he would eat, he said, "Please go, I'm going to have dinner." And again he greeted each one of us, and we would receive twice phone calls like that with an invitation to go and have tea. But on Saturday 20th, Narayani called us again. He said, Swami would like to have another tea with you. Please come. And we went to his house. And that evening, or that afternoon, he was even more inward. He had a very special look in his eyes. He would look into our eyes. We were talking amongst us. He was interacting, and he would interact a little, and then he would go inward again. And he looked at us in a very particular way. And he was very happy because there was always this beautiful smile on his face. Then around 6:20, he would say, I dismiss you. Please, you can go. And dismiss means you let someone really go. So before I went out, I had taken a chair from the dining room. I put that chair back in the dining room. I would always do that when I went to see Swami. And then I would go to him, look into his eyes and say, have a wonderful evening, Swamiji, and have a good meal. That evening, looking into his eyes, they were not the same as usual. They were definitely completely different. There was more light, they were bluer, they were deeper. And these eyes looked at me for maybe 5-6 seconds, not for a long time. And he looks at me and says, smiling, good night, Nadia. And so we went out. The morning after, around 8 o'clock, I received a phone call that Swami had left his body. And my experience was, on the one hand, something that broke in my heart, that closed down. On the other hand, I knew that Swami had waited for a long time to be able to be uplifted to a higher sphere. But the human part at that moment dominated, and I cried a lot. I was meditating at home, so I went immediately to Swami's house. I came into that room. He had just left the body. In the room, there were 3 or 4 people. But I believe there were hundreds of angels in that room. You could not fail to perceive that fullness of the light that was in that room. These angels came to receive Swami and say, welcome back home, we've come to fetch you. And tears without ending. And at that point, I don't know whether they were of joy or sadness. Then there was joy. For a moment, it was joy. And then I thought, I will not see you anymore. And then it was, of course I will see you again. You will always be with me. You will keep my hand, hold my hand, like you did on that day. And he's still holding my hand every day. In Swami's life, I have never had for reverence and respect. I never called him by I always said sir to him. When he left, since he left his body, I speak to him in a more personal way, more intimate way. What shall we do today, Swamiji? And I know that he will answer me, and he always answers, and he answers each one of us. because he has become part of us. I can't say sir to myself. I have to say friend. Call myself friend. He's my dearest friend. My dearest friend. The dearest friends I've had in my life. And this friendship will never end. And he is the friend of each one of us. When you attune yourself to Swami, the first thing that will happen is perceive a great friendship. And that friendship will last forever. If we forget him, it doesn't matter. That friendship will still be there, and we can again take our great friend by the hand at any moment. Each one of us is his son, his spiritual son. And he will never leave his children as long as this world exists. Thank you.
Depths of slumber as I ascend the spiral stairways of wakefulness, I will whisper, whisper, God, God, God. Thou art the food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from thee, I will taste thee and mentally say, God, God, God. No matter where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on thee, and in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be, God, God, God. When boisterous storms of trial shriek, and when worries howl at me, I will drown their noises loudly chanting, God, God, God. When my mind weaves dreams with threads of memories, on that magic cloth will I emboss, God, God, Every night in time of deepest sleep, when my peace dreams and calls, joy, joy, my joy comes singing evermore. God, God, God. In waking, eating, working, dreaming, sleeping, serving, meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by any. God, God, God. Love is all I know, sun rays on the snow of a winter long, in darkness without song. Oh, my heart's a fire, burning all desire. Only you remain, and life again. Too long I did stray, flung lifetimes away, imagined you did not care. I know now your smile was mine all the while. I listened and love was there. I can't breathe for love, all the stars above call to me, come home. Life's waves all end in foam. Only love can heal all the pain I feel. What a fool was I to turn away. Love is all I know, sun rays on the snow of a winter long, in darkness without song. Oh, my heart's a fire, burning all desire. Only you remain, and life again. Too long I did stray, flung lifetimes away, imagined you did not care. I know now your smile was mine all the while. I listened and love was there. I can't breathe for love, all the stars above call to me, come home. Life's waves all end in foam. Only love can heal all the pain I feel. What a fool was I to turn away. From the depths of slumber as I ascend the spiral stairways of wakefulness, I will whisper, whisper, God, God, God. Thou art the food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from thee, I will taste thee and mentally say, God, God, God. No matter where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on thee. And in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be, God, God, God. When boisterous storms of trials shriek, and when worries howl at me, I will drown their noises, loudly chanting, God, God, God. When my mind weaves dreams, dreams with threads of memories on that magic cloth where I emboss God, God, God. Every night, in time of deepest sleep, when my peace dreams and calls joy, joy, my joy comes singing evermore. God, God, God. In waking, eating, working, dreaming, sleeping, serving, meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by any. God.